Hey everybody, we're at it. Welcome. Rencity Weekly NBA Recap. We're in week 5 now, guys. This is like a little spin-off off my original podcast, Sports and Shorts of Sorts, which comes out every Monday. Last episode dropped Monday. Tune into that. But it's been a blast. I've had too much NBA stuff to fit in that podcast, so let's screw it. Let's go all hoops. Let's go all out. Let's talk ball. And here we are. So let's jump right into it, guys. Starting like I always do, I start in the Atlantic Division. Let's start with the leaders of that division, or leaders of the NBA. It's the Boston Celtics. They went 2-1 this past week, losing a tough one against the Magic in an in-season tournament game, but they bounced back, beat the Hawks and the Bulls in another in-season tournament game. That one might have ruffled some feathers a bit. You had Coach Mazzulla and his Boston team intentionally fouling Andre Drummond, kind of an old hack-a-shack technique to try to get him, notoriously bad free throw shooter, to miss some shots to, something you usually do in a tight game. And this caused Billy Donovan to approach Mazzulla like, what the hell are you doing? But in the in-season tournament, there's point differential, and they had to do what they had to do. You had a different players speaking out against this, but they had to do what they had to do. We'll get more into the in-season tournament later, but regardless, Celtics are the best team in the league right now. They're doing it on both ends of the floor. Jason Tatum's 27.7 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, almost 9, 4 dimes. This team looks like a team on a title mission. We'll be judging this team based on their playoff performance, but you got to be pretty optimistic if you're a Celtics fan right now. Staying with the division, the 76ers, they went 2-1 this week, winning a close one against the Thunder, where you had SGA and Holmgren going hard against Embiid and Maxey, a big dynamic duo matchup where the Sixers would end up winning. And they blow out the Lakers, massive win. They hyped up the Anthony Davis Joel Embiid matchup, but it was all Embiid. He went for a triple double, 30 points, 11 boards, 11 dimes, just sticking it to Davis. Embiid would miss the game against the Pelicans, and the Pelicans would feast inside without the big man. It was Maxey would do what he could in that game, but they were missing that Embiid and that twosome of Embiid and Maxey. They could carry this team deep into the playoffs, dare I say, to a title. Tobias Harris has been stepping up with Kelly Oubre Jr. out, wondering what still when he's coming back. But the key to this team is Embiid's health. Like you saw in the Pelicans game, without him, they're a total different team. With him on the floor, they're a title team. Simple as that. So if Nurse can keep Embiid healthy on the floor, you're good. Heading to the Big Apple, we got the Knicks. They went 2-1 this past week, having an insane in-season tournament comeback against the Heat, where they should have lost, but they battled all the way back to win that one. They lose a tight one at the Suns, getting at home to the Suns, on a last-second Devin Booker attempt there, but they bounced back and beat the LaMelo-less Hornets in an in-season tournament game, getting a big enough lead against the Hornets to help them advance in the tournament due to point differential. So repping the Knicks here, RJ Barrett in the house. He's been not really consistent this year. Him and Randall are averaging around the same points per game. Randall's been a little more consistent, but Emmanuel Quickly is starting to look like the regular six man we know he is, putting up some big scoring nights. Sticking in New York, we'll go to Brooklyn, go to the Nets. They went 3-0 this past week, beating the Heat, Bulls, and Raptors in an in-season tournament game. It's been Mikal Bridges and Spencer Dinwiddie leading the team this week, but it's been a lot of team effort too. Nick Claxton has been something else, playing really good ball, and they picked up all these wins without Cam Thomas in the lineup, who's still missing due to injury. But very impressive week by the Nets. You got to be happy for them there. Finishing the Atlantic, we go to the basement. Oof, the Toronto Raptors. They went 2-2 this week, spanking the Bulls in an in-season tournament, and I've mentioned the point differential thing. This caused former Toronto Raptor DeMar DeRozan to get ejected. He didn't like how they were jacking up shots late, but I mean, it's kind of the rule. I might have to adjust this rule to avoid people getting pouty, but it is a rule. Do what you got to do. Hate the rule, don't hate the game. The Raptors would then lose in Cleveland before losing to Brooklyn in an in-season tournament game, and then they'd come home and taking on a very hot Phoenix team. And the Raptors were out hustling the Suns, which was weird because they played the Nets the night previous. So they got into Toronto very late, and they were showing more of the energy. Dennis Schroeder he didn't have a big game, but late in the game, he'd dribble around like an old Bob Cousy highlight for getting the game-winning basket. It put them enough ahead where they were fine. They'd hit some more free throws and they'd take the win. But yeah, the Suns were on a 7-game winning streak, so good for the Raptors. they've showed what they're capable of. They just can't bring it every night. They're lacking that consistency. They got 6 guys averaging double figures. They just need to bring it every night. Scotty Barnes, though, wow, he's something else to watch. They really nailed it picking him. Going in the Central, we'll start with the leaders, the Milwaukee Bucks. They went 3-0 this past week. They were tested the whole way. They'd win a closer game than you'd ever thought, an in-season tournament game against the struggling Wizards. But the Bucks had 3 players at 30. You had Giannis go for 30, Dame hit 30, and Brook Lopez 39. They're doing that. You're not going to beat them. The Bucks then hosted Dame's old team, the Blazers, and the Blazers were up 26 at one point in that game. But Lillard and Antetokounmpo would spark a comeback, and they'd both have over 30 again in that win. And then you'd have a real playoff atmosphere in an in-season tournament game against the Heat. It felt like an Eastern Conference final game, and you'd have it going back and forth down the wire, but the Bucks would hold out and win it, and wow. Really exciting ball, but I preached it all season. This Bucks team can only go as far as their defense carries them. It's not doing a lot right now, but when I say that, you see what this offense could do in the clutch, and with like against Miami, you had the Greek Freak, Dame Dolla doing his thing, Middleton was doing that his thing, and if they're all covered, you kick it out the Splash Mountain for a 3 with Lopez. So this team is dangerous. I did pick them facing the Lakers before the season, but I didn't expect them to struggle this much defensively. We'll see what happens. They're leading the division, so they're still doing okay. The Pacers, my surprise pick this year, they only had 2 games this past week, and they'd went 1-1. They'd crushed the Pistons in an in-season game, only to lose the next game to the young Trailblazers. This is still a really good team, though. I wouldn't worry too much about that loss. The Blazers have been playing hot as of late, but yeah, if the Pacers, they keep doing what they're doing, they're going to rattle some cages in the playoffs. Tyrese Halliburton, his numbers, like they put him up against Steve Nash's numbers. I know the game's picked up in pace since back then, but Halliburton's numbers are pretty insane right now. You might need to put him in that MVP chatter. And it's not just Halliburton. This team's has 8 players averaging double-digit figures. Double figures in points. Wow, tough words, I guess. But much like the Bucks, this team needs to tighten it up defensively. You're not going to advance in the playoffs without defense. Going to Cleveland, they went 2-1 this past week, losing the tough one to the Lakers at home before they beat the Raptors in the same building. Then they'd win a one-sided in-season tournament game against the Atlanta Hawks. And when this team's clicking, they can beat anyone. That backcourt duo of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell is just as impressive as the frontcourt duo of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. So this team has all the pieces to do it. They're still pretty young. And I did question that Max Strus acquisition when it happened a little. I'm like, really? But man, he's made me look like an idiot. He's playing great for the Cavs on both sides of the ball. This is a very tough team. You don't want to meet them. The Bulls, who they went 0-3 this past week, losing 5 in a row now. They lose to the Raptors in that in-season tournament game I alluded to earlier with DeMar getting ejected. They then lose to the Nets before the Celtics crushed them in that in-season tournament game I also mentioned earlier where Billy Donovan was all pissed off that they were running his team up. But I mean, you could try to stop them, then they wouldn't be running it up, right? But this team looks like a free fall. Coach seems to be at wit's end. You got DeMar and Zach LaVine, they're each averaging 21 points per game, and none of this is equaling wins. It's just, I mentioned it last podcast. I feel when is it going to happen? When is the coach going to get canned, or when is Zach LaVine going to get traded? Something's got to happen soon, you figure, because this team is just free falling. I don't know. They got to shake something up, because what's working right now is nothing. And people are criticizing LaVine a bit, like, we shouldn't trade for him. He puts up big numbers on a bad team. But when Lonzo Ball was healthy, this team was fire. And LaVine was a big part of that. I think if you have him in a better system with a pass-first point guard, he'll deliver on a big contract. Unfortunately, the Bulls are not that team. So we'll see what happens with the Bulls. The days of MJ are far and gone. Wrapping up the Central, we go to Motor City. Detroit. The Pistons 0-3 this week and have now lost 15 games in a row. Oh my goodness. They were blown out by the Pacers. The Wizards blew them out. Yikes. And then the Lakers. This team, they're looking not very good right now. They seem, I don't know, they go down in the games and they don't even really come back now. That's a confidence thing, These players are all higher draft picks usually. They're used to winning, and this is far from winning right now. At least they have the right guy, I believe, with Monty Williams to try and heady the ship here. But Yeah, they need to get that first win to break this streak and get them thinking clearly. Kate Cunningham has looked really good, but there's a lot of inconsistencies on this team. They are young and they're learning on the fly, but yikes. You hope they can break this streak, so no one wants to see that. Going to the Southeast, we start with the leaders. The very hot Orlando Magic went 3-0 this week and have won 8 in a row, the current longest streak in the league. So they beat the Celtics in an in-season tournament game. Big surprise there. Then they crushed the Hornets before crushing the Wizards. Those two wins not as impressive, but this team's fire. I picked them to win the in-season tournament, and they've been eliminated because of that blasted tiebreak rule, but they're gonna keep rolling this season and do damage in the playoffs, I believe. Yeah, I think they can even win a series this year. This team, they're doing it on both ends of the ball. And I said in previous episodes, like the biggest improvement this team will need will be the stepping up of Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs, and that's just what they did. They've done it so far, and they even recreated that iconic Wade LeBron dunk while smashing the Wizards. He threw it up, arms in the air, as it goes in the back. So that was pretty cool. Well, this team is confident. I was mentioning Pistons lacking confidence. The Magic have abundance of confidence. They can go out and they feel like they can beat anyone, and you know what? They probably can. Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero, two-headed beast on this team, but like I said, Suggs, Anthony, and that acquisition of Joe Oldman Ingles, he's been fitting it right in there, the perfect glue guy for this team, and look out for the Magic. Watch out. Staying in Florida, we go to Miami. Heat had a tough week. They went 0-3. Gave away that game to the Knicks I mentioned earlier in the in-season tournament. And then they'd have no Bam or Butler in the loss to the Nets. And then we'd witness that doozy of a game against the Bucks in that in-season tournament game that felt like a playoff game. They didn't have Butler still, but Bam had a bio. He looked like a star there, going 31 points, 10 boards, and making clutch shots. Good defense. They could have won that game, just the Bucks closed it out a little better. And despite this winless week, this is a damn good team, and everybody's talking about him now. But that Yami Yaquez, he's got to be the third best rookie right now behind Wemby and Holmgren. Excuse me, and those are beasts. If you didn't have them, he could be rookie of the year because he's playing solid, big minutes in the crunch. Like, who would have thought that? But like people have pointed out, 4-year guy at UCLA, it helps if you stay in college and develop your game. Some guys make the jump early. He didn't, and it's paying off dividends now. Sticking in the division, down in Atlanta, the Hawks would go 1-2 this week. They beat a bad Wizards team before losing to the Celtics and then the Cavs in an in-season tournament game. This team doesn't seem to get very high or very low, which is why they're around the 500 mark, I believe. It's much like a Raptors feel. Some nights you feel, damn, this team's got it, especially when Trey and DeJounte Murray are cooking. And then other nights you're like, who are these guys, right? There's 7 guys averaging double figures, so they're getting it from everywhere. But I think the big injury to Jalen Johnson, he's been filling in at power forward with John Collins leaving town. And yeah, it just sucks. Wrist injury, 4 to 6 weeks. So hope you can get him back because he's making a big difference on this team. Go to the Charlotte Hornets. They went 0-2 this past week, getting blown out by the Magic before getting blown out by the Knicks in that in-season game. But the biggest news was in that game against the Magic. LaMelo Ball, who's been on an absolute tear of late, would go down with a right ankle injury, and it said he's going to miss some extended time. So that's a huge bummer. Just as the Hornets got Terry Rozier back in the lineup that game. So, this Hornets team kind of goes as Ball goes. So I see them struggling a bit over the next while. Number 2 overall pick, Brandon Miller stepped up, so that's good to see. But this team's going to be relying heavily on Rozier and Bridges going forward until Ball comes back. Again, he was just killing it, so you hate to see injuries. Ugh, injuries. We'll go to the last team in the Southeast, emphasize on the last there, the Washington Wizards. They went 1-3 this week. They got their 3rd win of the season. They lose a close one to the Bucks, like I mentioned, that in-season tournament where the Bucks needed 3 guys and 30 to win. And then they'd get blown out by the Hawks, and they'd beat the struggling Pistons team. I mean, if the Wizards could keep playing the Pistons, they'd help their win-loss record. But yeah, this team just doesn't stop anybody defensively. They can score in bunches, but the inconsistencies on the defensive end usually have them out of games pretty early. The Jordan Poole experiment's been interesting, but Kyle Kuzma, you got to give him his flowers. He's putting up good numbers here. Not really complaining about it too much. He's trying to do what he can on this team. Another bright spot is Bilal Coulibaly. I've mentioned that rookie before. His minutes seem to be going up. Maybe because he's the only guy playing defense, but geez, if he can develop some offensive game too, that guy's gonna be a stud. But yeah, we'll go to the Western Conference now. We'll start with the cream of the crop, top team in the Northwest and the West, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They went 2-1 this past week. They get beaten up by the Kings in the in-season tournament game, but then they pound the Grizzlies before winning a very tight contested game against the Thunder in an in-season tournament game. That game against the Thunder had a bit of a scary moment. Superstar Anthony Edwards was driving hard to the hoop, and it looked like Jalen Williams from Arkansas tried to take the charge and landed right on his hip. He had to go to the locker room, and he didn't come back. I hope it's nothing serious. He's one of my favorite players watching the NBA right now. With him out, Troy Brown Jr. of the Lakers last year stepped up and helped the Wolves get the win. They hold off OKC. It was a big win for Minnesota to stay top in the West, and they're real, you know. This defense is something else. Rudy Gobert, if you watch the highlights of what he did to Chet Holmgren, man, Holmgren's been having a good season, and Gobert kind of bullied him a bit. You know, that's the balance of the NBA. But the biggest thing for this team is Anthony Edwards' health. If he's out for a bit of time, I don't know what this team will do. Who's going to step up into that role? But right now, what mixture they have now, it's working. And again, I mentioned Chris Finch and the Coach of the Year talk. I think we still need to be having that. Sticking with the Northwest, we go to the Mile High City, the champs. Denver Nuggets went 3-1 this past week. They lose to Houston in an in-season tournament game. Jokic went nuts in that, though, going 38 points, 19 boards, 8 dimes. Wasn't enough, though, as they took the loss. But the Nuggets would bounce back, beating the Spurs and Clippers before getting revenge on the Rockets. And that recent game against the Rockets was huge because Jamal Murray returned from injury, and he had a good game, 16 points, 6 boards, 6 dimes. And Jokic threw up a huge triple-double in that always fun battle against Sengun. Those big men, they're calling Sengun Baby Jokic, and you can see why. Very, very similar games. Michael Porter Jr. has been on fire. Reggie Jackson filled in admirably for Jamal Murray while he was out, especially against the Clippers. He went 35 points and 13 dimes against his old team. So this defending champs look like they're capable of repeating, especially with Murray back now. And Jokic, he's putting up MVP numbers again, almost averaging a triple-double. He might win his third one. Craziness. But sticking with that tough division, we'll go to the Thunder. The Thunder went 0-2 this past week. They lose a tight one to the Sixers before dropping that close one to the Timberwolves. Both were close games against two of the best teams in the league, so you got to feel pretty good about that. What you don't want to feel pretty good about is the news surrounding the team and Josh Giddey. It started with pictures online and videos of him with it looked like a very young girl, and she was minor, I guess, in these pictures. I don't know if she still is, but it's caused an NBA investigation. It's now escalated to the point where police in California have opened an investigation. But now it said the girl and the police aren't, or the girl and her family aren't cooperating with police. So I don't know what's going on here. It's pretty wild to me that Giddey is still playing during all these allegations and investigations because, like, you know, this isn't a small thing. This isn't a speeding ticket. This is having a relationship with a minor. This is Karl Malone territory. Like, I don't know what's going to happen here. You know, people are going crazy on the internet. Like, why aren't more people talking about this? While people in the media are like, let's wait and hear what happened. We don't want a Corey Perry, Connor Bedard thing going on if you're watching hockey. But yeah, this is huge. I don't know what's going to happen with the Australian guard here. We'll have to keep our eyes on it and see what happens. But on the court, SGA, he continues to be an all first team player. Holmgren is doing his best to wrestle that Rookie of the Year trophy away from Wembanyama. It's a really good, exciting team to watch. One of my favorites to watch. It's just, yeah, we'll see what happens with Josh Giddey. Every time he touched the ball, the Minnesota Timberwolves faithful would let him know. So we'll see what happens. But going to the Jazz. Jazz were without Lauri Markkanen all week, and didn't look like they seemed to matter much going 2-1. They beat the Pelicans in 2 straight matchups before losing to the Grizzlies. They look like they missed them that one, but Utah's been flexing that young depth, you know, in these wins, getting everybody involved in the scoring. It's pretty fun to see that. And, you know, and they're not the same team without the big Finn out there, but it's exciting to see so many players get involved. Wrapping up the Northwest, we go to Portland. Blazers went 1-1 this week. They'd lose that tough one in Milwaukee after having that huge lead in the third quarter, but they'd follow that up by beating a very tough Indiana team at home. Jeremy Grant, Malcolm Brogdon have been everything you want out of vets, helping that team learn on the fly. But it seems like the guys are starting to get it under Chauncey Billups. He's finding their roles here, and it seems like, I don't know, they're on pace to steal a few wins in the upcoming weeks here. Heading that tough Pacific Division, we start with the Phoenix Suns, who went 2-1 this past week, crushing the Grizzlies in that in-season tournament game before winning the tight one in New York. The Suns let the Knicks back in the game, and you're like, oh, are the Knicks going to steal this? But then Devin Booker was clutch. Double team would come his way. He'd dribble away from the double team, he's got a gorgeous jumper, gorgeous three-pointer to win the game. Suns would then come into Toronto, and they lose to the Raptors, ending their 7-game winning streak. But man, the Suns have been hot. Other than that loss in Toronto, Booker and KD are getting more time together. It's looking great. Eric Gordon, man, might be the signing of the year for how he's fitting in there. Yusuf Nurkic playing some big ball on both sides of the floor, especially against the Raptors there in that loss. But we still haven't seen Beal, KD, and Booker together, so we don't even know what the ceiling is for this team. We gotta see them put some time together to see if they can start meshing. Heading the capital of California, we go to Sacramento. Kings went 2-1 this past week, beat the T Wolves in that in-season tournament game before going down big to the Warriors, before staging a huge comeback to stay undefeated in the in-season tournament group play and beat the Warriors. And the very next night, they'd host the Clippers, and you could see the fatigue there. They let it all on the floor against the Warriors, and they didn't have much to show against the Clippers in that loss. They took their punch in the chin there. Keegan Murray's missed a few games, so hopefully he can get back, because sophomore players, he fits perfect with that team. De'Aaron Fox continues to show why he's one of the best guards in the league. Sabonis does it all up front. Scary and fun team to watch. Going to LA, we start with the Lakers. They went 2-1 this past week, winning a game in Cleveland before getting demolished by the Sixers. It was the first time in 1,097 games that LeBron James did not grab a rebound. And that 44-point loss was the largest of his NBA career. So not a good night in the office. The Lakers would take their frustrations out on a bad Detroit team, pounding the hell out of them. But this team's played pretty good, minus that Philly game. I wouldn't worry about that one. That was a one-off, I think. But LeBron is just doing unreal things. We keep beating this horse here, but man, he's in his 21st season. He's averaging 25 a game, 7.6 boards, 6.3 dimes. That's unreal. That does not happen. So this is impressive. Don't take this for granted. Anthony Davis is one of the few players averaging 20 and 10. He's got 22.2 points a game, 12.3 boards, while averaging 2.8 blocks. So he's protecting that paint. D'Angelo Russell's been playing pretty good lately, dropping 35 on the Pistons. So I think the Lakers are doing all right here. And sticking in LA, we'll go to the Clippers. They went 2-2 this past week, losing to the Pels in an in-season game. Then they beat down on the Mavericks, which usually goes the other way around. Lucas kind of owned them, but during that game, Russell Westbrook would go at Luka, and he'd tell his whole team would go at him. He's a weak on D. Got all of that out of Russell Westbrook. And then the Clippers would get burned by the players of Clippers past when Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan would light them up with the Nuggets as the Nuggets beat them. And then they get a nice blowout win over the Kings team. Like I mentioned, the Kings were pretty tired there, so it's still hard to predict the ceiling of this team. James Harden's fitting in a little better, and when they're cooking, this is some fun basketball to watch. But the one big thing you like seeing is Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are playing a lot of games, which is awesome because they've missed a lot of time lately. So you can see what they're capable of when they're playing. You don't want to meet this team in a 7-game series, I think. The basement of the Pacific Division for the second straight week, the Golden State Warriors. Whoa. They had only had 2 games, both in-season tournament games. They split them, beating up on the young Spurs before giving up that massive lead to the Kings. Steph Curry continues to play lights out, but it's the rest of the team. Klay Thompson's inconsistency. Andrew Wiggins hasn't really helped. Draymond coming back from his suspension should help things, but this team might need to shake things up. Maybe not trade, but lineup-wise. CP3's down with what they're calling a lower left leg nerve contusion. That can't be good. Gary Payton II is a torn right calf, so he's going to miss some times. Though both those injuries occurred in that Kings loss, but these injuries could add to the Warriors' struggles, or maybe this is Moses Moody's time to shine. He's putting some good minutes. Let's maybe thrust him into that role and see what he can do. But really, I think Andrew Wiggins needs to step up. People have been calling it his conditioning out, I guess, but he's got to step up. And Klay Thompson, I don't think he's washed, but he's struggling out there. Going to the last division in the league, the Southwest, we start with the Mavericks. Biggest news around this team right now is Mark Cuban selling majority stake of the franchise to Miriam Adelson and her family for a valuation of $3.5 billion. Wow. Cuban initially bought the Mavs back in 2000 for $285 million. And it said that Cuban will retain shares in the team while also having full control of basketball operations. That seems like a pretty good deal. You can tell he's been working on Shark Tank, even though he's left that show now. So I don't know what Mark Cuban's got planned. But it was said that Adelson was selling $2 billion worth of stock in the company to put towards buying this franchise, and that's only 10% of her stake. So it shows how much money she has. On the court, the Mavs only had 2 games and split them. They were blown out by the Clippers, like I said, which never seems to happen to Luka. But they bounced back and beat a tough Rockets team in the in-season tournament. Luka Doncic, he continues to look like an MVP, and I cannot emphasize how great Kyrie is fitting in with him now. Day and night from last season, I think a whole training camp together definitely helped. They're looking damn good. So much that Jason Kidd called the media out saying, why don't you guys say anything positive? You're negative Nancy's all last season, but now we're doing good and positive. You can't say anything about it. He said if you write positive stories, people will still read them. So it was good for Kidd to step up for his team like that. Going to New Orleans, the Pelicans went 2-2 this week. Kind of a weird one. They beat the Clippers in an in-season tournament game, but then they lose 2 straight in Utah to the Jazz without Markkanen. They bounced back and beat an Embiid-less 76ers team, but the big news in that Philly game was the return of C.J. McCollum. He's been out for a while with that collapsed lung injury, but his return to the team should help them go on a little run. I'm expecting them to start clicking here and going on a big run. Zion and Ingram have been a hell of a 1-2 punch, and now you throw CJ into that fold. Look out, rest of the NBA. Surprising Houston Rockets went 1-2 last week, but they had some tough games. They pounded Nuggets at home in that in-season tournament game before losing 2 close ones on the road, first in Dallas and then in Denver. But this team has been a joy to watch. You can't say how well of a job Ime Udoka has done with this young team. He's killing it. Sengun is one of the best young players in the league right now. Baby Jokic nickname is legit. Continues to get better each game. Jalen Green has been playing with some more consistency. That is an awesome 1-2 punch, a very young 1-2 punch. And all the vets are doing their thing. I feel like this could be a playoff team. I said it. It's crazy to say, but they should be in there. Ahmad Thompson, their rookie, isn't even playing, so yeah, if you're playing Houston anytime soon, buckle up. You're in for it. Walking in Memphis, we check out the Grizzlies here. They went 1-2 this past week, getting blown out by the Suns in that in-season tournament game before getting blown out by the T-Wolves. Hey, but they beat a Markkanen-less Jazz to get their 4th win of the season. Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. continuing to do their thing, but they need some of these young guys to be a little more consistent. They're getting minutes, with all the people out of the lineup the Grizzlies seem to have. So as long as they keep fighting, that's the main thing. Now we go to the basement of the Western Conference. We end with my San Antonio Spurs. They lost both their games this past week, extending their streak to 12 now. They lose to the Warriors in that in-season tournament game before getting blown out by the Nuggets. Wembanyama leads the Spurs in scoring as a rookie, but this young team is struggling, Much like the Pistons on their losing streak, it just seems like the confidence is shaking a bit. Pop has to keep these guys positive and get them through these tough times, but I think with Wemby's plate he has of having to carry the team should help his Rookie of the Year case, We'll see. But that's the NBA divisions in a nutshell. How's your team looking? Can't be any lower than my Spurs, but I'm thinking long term here, so I'm still playing the long ball here. But it can be hard some days. This week wrapped up group play in the in-season tournament, how I've mentioned a few times. What have you thought about it? I think it's been great. I know the point differential tiebreaker has ruffled some feathers, DeMar DeRozan, and I get that, but it did come into play a few times in the East at least. So after group play is where we lie. Our group winners: East Group A, Indiana Pacers; East Group B, Milwaukee Bucks; East Group C, Boston Celtics with a tiebreaker. The West Group A, LA Lakers; West Group B, New Orleans Pelicans; West Group C, Sacramento Kings; East Wildcard, New York Knicks, again on point differential, as well as the West Wildcard, Phoenix Suns. So where does that leave us? We got those 8 teams, and they'll match up Monday and Tuesday, the 4th and the 5th of December. On the 4th, you'll have the Celtics and Pacers and Pelicans and Kings. On the Tuesday, you'll have the Knicks and Bucks and Suns at Lakers. And then, boom, December 7th, semifinals, and a week from today in the championship. So that's how we look. That's it. That's the tournament. Not too confusing now. It's 1-game elimination. So there'll be a gap for teams not involved in this tournament. At the beginning of next week, you'll see there's nobody's playing. It's all to finish this tournament up. And I picked the Magic to win this thing, but they were out on that tiebreaker to the Celtics there. So Missoula did the right thing, even though they might want to tinker with those rules. But that's next year. Looking at this current bracket, I'm thinking it's New Orleans Pelicans to win this thing. Getting CJ back, I feel they're going on a run. So next week, by this next recording, I'm thinking our finals matchup will be Pelicans and Bucks. And you're gonna have playoff atmosphere in all the games leading up to it. So tune in and we'll see what's up. That brings us to stat leaders. Joel Embiid leading the league in scoring at 32 points. Kevin Durant, Doncic, De'Aaron Fox, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're all averaging over 30 points per game. Top rebounders, you got Jokic at 13.2 a game. Anthony Davis, Sabonis, Rudy Gobert, and Embiid just behind him. Assist leaders, you have only two guys in double digits. Tyrese Halliburton continues his MVP play, averaging just under 12 a game, while Trae Young not too far behind at 10.4. Brooke Lopez and Anthony Davis lead the league in blocks at 2.8, but don't look too far. Rookie Wembanyama is just behind them, and Gilgeous-Alexander continues to lead the league in steals. So that brings you to the Rencity top five, y'all. Starting to get a little more consistency there. Same five teams, they just had to do a little Cupid shuffle. So number one, I have the Orlando Magic. 2, Boston Celtics. 3, Minnesota Timberwolves. 4, Phoenix Suns. 5, Dallas Mavericks. I was going to have the Celtics stay at the top, but with the Magic beating them this past week, I had to give that head-to-head matchup. You know, thinking college football playoffs and how they figure the head-to-head matchup can come in the factor. So that's why I have the Magic at number one right now. But you could have either or. Celtics are right there with them, and they're just not on an 8-game winning streak. Timberwolves continue to look the dominant team. They've got it all except for a maybe healthy Anthony Edwards. Hopefully he doesn't miss any time here. If he doesn't, this team will continue to thrive. The Suns at 4, even though their 7-game winning streak was ruined by the Raptors, they're looking good, and they're starting to click. Mavericks stay in the top 5, even after that slacking by the Clippers. I think that was a one-off, but this 1-2 punch of Luka and Kyrie still have them in the top 5. Any arguments there? I don't think so. I think it's pretty good. Going the MVP discussion, I still have Boston's Jason Tatum leading the way, but the other candidates are right there nipping at his heels. Jokic, Embiid, Durant, and maybe even throw a few wild cards in there, dare I. Halliburton and Edwards. But now I think it's Tatum's to win. I mentioned Rookie of the Year a few times, and how I felt OKC's Holmgren was getting a firmer grip on the trophy. But I mentioned Wemby having to do a lot more with that Spurs team, so maybe that helped him, because he's sometimes the first option, while Chet Holmgren is usually down the pecking order. So we'll see what happens there. It'll be a tight race throughout the year. But hey, that's week 5, y'all. Like I said, we've had some amazing basketball. We've had the tournament group play winding up, so tune into that and let me know what you're thinking of the tournament as it wraps up next week. I'm all for it. We'll see if the Magic can stay hot. As I mentioned earlier, I'm expecting this Pelicans team to turn it up. And, you know, CJ back in the lineup. They're going to make a run for the inaugural NBA Cup, I believe. But thanks for tuning in again, guys. And remember, each week you can catch my regular show, Sports and Shorts of Sorts, every Monday, covering the week of sports with a short story to round it up. But that's it, yo. Week 5 in the books. Keep shooting. Hold that follow through. Rencity out.